Hi guys, my name's Nick Broughton and I'm a Randomfish. Hit the subscribe button and let's all be Randomfishes together, shall we? Well, on my hiatus I had attempted to do various videos about my Being Better series. Those videos were dumb and to be honest I'm doing a lot better than I was. So I'm gonna go back to some reviews and rewrites. Those I may have to delegate to my Tumblr posts and not on here, but to be honest, I'll see. Tell me what you guys think. I know there's someone out there's a dude who decided to ask me to rewrite Superman 3. I don't know if I can do that and make it better by any stretch, or at least not without a complete overhaul and rewatching the movie a ton, which I really don't want to do. But moving on to what I would be able to talk about, there have been some interesting new things released, hasn't there? The Snyder Cut of Justice League is being released on HBO Max, which I don't have. On Netflix, we've received the latest attempt from Kevin James to be heard over the din of other comedians, all shouting the exact same thing of, "I can be serious and relevant, I promise!" Or The Crew, to give it its proper name anyway. So that's something I will be looking at eventually. However, I want to go look back on some movies that have been released not too long ago, yet still hit me in my nostalgic feels. While I didn't have access to the certain channels like Disney or Nickelodeon, etc. when I was younger, I did find some movies appearing on the likes of ITV2 and the like. And one of those films was Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I watched with amazement and laughed my 14-year-old ass off when I first watched that movie, and my brother, in all of his infinite wisdom, lent me his copy of Bogus Journey, which I watched over and over and over again, and eventually recorded my own copies on VHS tapes of Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journeys. Now, if you don't know what a VHS tape is, I feel so sorry for you, because they were joys in VHS tapes, I'm telling you now. I love both of those films for various reasons. The same thing has always entered my mind, that these films were based off of a belief and demographic that was never going to return to us at any point soon. And thus, any further Bill and Ted stories that could have been told or created in any way were never going to be. But whoo-hoo, was I wrong. Because last year, we have released unto us the third chapter in the story, simply named Bill and Ted Face the Music. The way the title was framed, I was expecting something to be infinitely harsher, perhaps. But, spoiler-free review, I loved the film. It was goofy, highlighted some of the best parts that, that came from absolutely just the most absurd things possible. And it highlighted some of the most amazing things of where these guys came from as opposed to where they are now. You know? All the actors chosen for this film that are new do obscenely well, and I'll get more into that in just a second. But to be honest, let's look at this. We have returning actors like Alex Winters and Keanu Reeves, obviously reprising their main roles as Bill and Ted. We also have the return of characters like Amy Stotch playing Missy, the stepmom, Hal Landon Jr. playing Ted's father, William Sadler playing the devil, or Salder. Is it Salder or Sadler? No, it's Salder, isn't it? It's got to be Salder. Along with other great additions to the cast, like the likes of Kristen Schaal, Bridget Londa Payne, Samara Weaving. Yes, she is related to Hugo Weaving, but he's her uncle, not her father. Don't get too excited, people. Jamara Mays, Erin Hayes, Anthony Carrigan, for example. Those names are the big names that have been attached to this movie alongside the returning original stars. But you know what? Enough of this. Jumping straight into spoilers. Starting off with a retelling of the plot, if you will. So, let's jump into it. But if you don't want to see that, please leave. Counting down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They gone? Fantastic. Let's move on. So, The plot real quick. We start off with an intro done by Bill and Ted's daughters, Billy and Thea, about what happened to their fathers and how Wild Stallions was meant to get big and then never did. We then cut to a wedding. A wedding that is the wedding of one of the main characters, Missy. Now, as I said, Amy Schott did return for this as Missy. But the funny thing is that if you remember the other movies, then you'll know exactly why this is hilarious. In the first film, Excellent Adventure, Missy was Bill's stepmom. She was married to Bill's dad. That was it, end of. Bogus Journey happened, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere almost, Missy was married to Ted's dad, not Bill's. I don't know what happened that caused them to break up, but apparently something must have happened at some point in time. But in this film, bizarrely enough, we see Missy's getting married again. But who to? In Bogus Journey, there was a reference that one of the princesses said to Ted, said, "Maybe she'll marry you." And then Bill laughs and says, "Yeah, then you'd be your own stepdad." And they had a nice laugh about it. And wait, she's marrying Deacon. No, I'm not kidding. She's marrying Deacon, the younger brother of Ted in this. Now, I have to admit this was kind of an interesting take, given especially what we see, the fact that we know that Ted and Bill are in love with their princesses and everything else. So it would have been wrong to have had Ted getting married to Missy. So I have to say that is a wonderful compromise to throw in there. Now, I honestly didn't know if Missy would be around or if she would have just left. But I gotta say, upon hearing that she was marrying Deacon, it did make too much sense. It really did. And what makes this even more hilarious is that Ted's dad is at the wedding. So I'm guessing the breakup between him and Missy must have been somewhat amicable. Otherwise, why would he be there being like, "Yeah, it's fine, go off, divorce me, marry my youngest son, it's fine, it's totally fine, I'm not crying inside, God." And stuff like that, really. But of course, Ted's dad wasn't paying attention to that. He was more paying attention to Bill and Ted, as were we in the audience, because they don't focus a whole lot on that. They focus immediately on what Bill and Ted are trying to do. They're trying to write a song that will unite the world, unite the universe, and everything else. Which is exactly what Rufus said in the first movie. If you remember, in Excellent Adventure, he says, "Eventually, your music will help bring an end to war and poverty. It will align the planets and bring them into universal harmony, allowing meaningful contact with all forms of life." That's what he says. And that is something that is clearly a big thing in these movies. So the fact they haven't written that song yet, despite Bogus Journey having been done, I think, in the early 90s, it's been a while for them, and they're still writing songs, which I have to say is both incredibly depressing and incredibly hilarious at the same time. I do honestly feel like sometimes I think I'm going to have to try and start sticking back to this YouTube schedule like I'm Bill and Ted, in the fact that I don't really care if I'm not going to get anywhere in terms of fame. Just doing it because it's fun, really. It's kind of hilarious to me. But of course, Ted's dad has a go at them because obviously they haven't written the song that'll unite the world. He doesn't believe them about them going to hell or going to heaven or meeting death or anything like that, despite the fact that Death appeared on the TV playing bass. Station was there on the bongos at the end of Bogus Journey. Don Mammalus turned up in a time machine. Did no one else tell Ted's dad about that? He probably thought they were all high. What the hell am I saying? I mean, Jesus, this is Ted's dad. He's less believing in magic than Seto Kaiba is from Yu-Gi-Oh! For crying out loud. And that's saying a lot. But of course he has a go at them and says things like, "Be role models to your daughters." And then of course you meet Billy and Thea properly and you kind of realise they're more like Bill and Ted than they are like the princesses. In fact, the only thing they've travelled over from the princesses is their gender. And I have to say, in terms of casting and everything else, It's like seeing Bill and Ted in a gender-swapped universe, and I mean that in the best possible way. I really do. But of course, after all of this happens, there's also a therapy session, a family therapy session between Bill and Ted and the princesses. They're a little concerned about Bill and Ted because they've been banging their heads against a brick wall essentially for a while, trying to write the song, and it's not actually happened. They're also concerned because neither Bill or Ted seems to have the ability to say, I love you. They always say, we love you. Like, me, I am Bill, love you. There's no just I. Like, it's this beautiful little codependent system that exists. And it does bring this stuff up, and it is genuine. There is genuine worry and concern about these things at the beginning of the film, and it's great. They return back to, I think it's either their shared home or maybe it's one of their homes. I'm not sure if it's Bill and Ted and the way the codependent stuff is going on. I do kind of believe that it is their shared home. Like, it's not any one of them particularly owning the house. They both own it. It's kind of one of those things. Billy and Thea are properly introduced to us here with the idea that they like listening to music, and they also go so far as to sort of say to each other things like, oh, you've got to hear this bit of this song, it's completely amazing, oh my god, listen to this bass solo, it's baller, oh my god, listen to this sound effect from this, and this is amazing. And they're really into their music. So put that away in the back pocket for just a second, because we actually then get what is essentially one of the deepest moments of these movies, in that Bill and Ted go to start jamming to try and write the song, and Ted gives off this massive speech of being like, dude, I'm tired. I'm tired of doing this. Maybe the princesses are right. Maybe we're just banging our heads against a brick wall. Maybe we're never actually going to write this song. Maybe this, maybe that, blah, blah, blah. And it's legitimately heartbreaking to hear these things, but you also kind of think to yourself, yeah, it's been a couple of decades now at least, guys. Like, you really should be looking into these things, like alternate forms of life. They're talking about starting to get real jobs and acting like adults and blah blah blah, and that's when all hell breaks loose. Rufus's daughter Kelly, played of course by Christian Schall, or Skal, or I don't know how to pronounce your name, I'm really sorry. I doubt you're even watching this review, but I'm really sorry. But Rufus's daughter Kelly comes hurtling in, takes Bill and Ted to the future in the new egg-shaped time machines. Not the phone booths of old, which are apparently now like a museum item, apparently, which is kind of entertaining. And they go before Kelly's mother and Rufus's wife, or maybe his booty call, it's George Carlin, so I don't quite know. But the idea is that she says to them, if you don't write and perform the song that we unite the world at 7:17 p.m. exactly on this day, the universe is going to be destroyed and time is going to unravel. And Bill and Ted are like, okay, but we have no idea. And she goes, you're staying here and you're writing the song. And they sit there and they look at the instruments. They look at the phone booth. It's just sat there. It's not behind any glass windows. There's no alarm system. No, nothing like that. No. So, of course, what else do you think they did? They look at each other and and Bill gives possibly the best line in the entire movie of, how can I be stealing? We're stealing it from ourselves, dude. They go into the future to find their future selves who have written the song that unites the world and steal it from their future selves to then play it now. Combination of beautiful time travel logic and absolutely awful time travel logic, but you just don't care because it's Bill and Ted. They're looking at each other with that grin of being like, let's get in the time machine and go steal the song from ourselves, dude. It's awesome. And they get in the time machine and they fly off. And Kelly's mom is a little bit upset about this, so she sends off a giant, time-traveling robot to bring them back or kill them. Who's called Dennis. A robot called Dennis. Yes, that is real. Yes, 100% it is real. But Kelly goes back to 2020 where Thea and Billy suddenly go, "Our dads are in trouble, aren't they?" And she says, "Yep." So they take Kelly's time machine and they go travelling through time to find all the best musicians to give them to give for their dad's band. They end up going back to the likes of Jimi Hendrix, Mozart, Louis Armstrong, Ling Lun, and some prehistoric drummer called Grom. Now, through all of this, Dennis is an idiot. They go traveling through time. Dennis is an idiot, and he ends up destroying them and killing them and sending them to hell. Bill and Ted, throughout all of this, have been visiting their future selves, and things are getting worse and worse and worse for them. And they blame their past selves because their past selves also left the therapy session with their wives still there, and they then believe that the past selves screwed it up so bad that the wives left them and went traveling through time because they wanted to find better lives for themselves. So Bill and Ted are quite upset about this, and they end up meeting their very, very older selves, i.e. on the deathbed future selves, who give them a memory stick, or a flash drive, that has Preston Logan written on it, and it says that that's the song. They end up going back to 2020, they discover their daughters and all of these musicians have been sent to hell. They destroy the flash drive so Dennis will kill them. Dennis has a moment of conscience, goes to kill himself. Bill and Ted jump in the way, there's a big bang, and they all end up in hell. This is where Death returns. Turns out the reason why Death hasn't been speaking to them, or hasn't been in the movie up until this point, is because he had a massive falling out with Wild Stallions, to the point where he left the band and went back to his job as being Death. Billy and Thea convinced them to patch things up with Death, and there's actually a very emotional, "We forgive you, we're sorry, Death, oh my god, hugs, yay, great," and Death sends them back. They end up back on Earth in 2020, the wives turn back up in a time machine, saying, "Yeah, we like it here actually, we're not gonna leave you, we like it here." So thankfully, this does actually work with the line of going, you know, there's 1,000,001 potential futures, but there's only one definitive future, but you don't know that because that definitive future becomes your present, which you cannot change. So it's like that. Also, another quick thing I wanted to point out, there's a nice little cameo thrown in here of Bill and Ted having living in or crashed at Dave Grohl's house. Dave Grohl turns up and just starts yelling at Bill and Ted, and I'm sitting there going, "My little heavy metal loving mind is being blown. Foo Fighters is yelling at Bill and Ted. What?" Completely freaking out. And then, of course, we get to the giant climax of the movie where time is falling apart, the universe is going to end, so they've got to play the song. Bill and Ted don't know what the song is, but of course, if you have even an ounce of a brain cell, and if you've been paying any kind of attention to these types of movies, when people ambiguously only use the last names of things on something like a flash drive, you immediately know that it's not going to be as simple as just like, this belongs to the main characters. It just isn't. So, of course, we learn that Bill and Ted aren't the ones who make the song that unites the world. It's Billy and Thea, who, of course, are obsessed with music and know about all the best bits of music and everything else. So, of course, this then leads into this lovely sort of mesh-up between Hendrix's guitar, Louis Armstrong's trumpet, Lina on the harp, Mozart on the piano, and Grom on the drums. And of course, this also leads into Bill and Ted playing guitars for them. But also, they then get in Rufus's old time machine, send out multiple copies of themselves across time, giving out instruments to everyone across time. And the reason why it unites the world is because it's a song played through time. That is genius. I love this. I love this as an ending because it's the most perfect ending to a Bill and Ted trilogy that you could possibly have created. The idea of it being sent throughout time, like a ripple effect. Kind of like how in Doctor Who, when Clara ended up going into the Doctor's time stream and spread throughout his entire time stream. It's the same thing. Bill and Ted are essentially now scattered throughout time, giving instruments to people, uniting the world, and then all of a sudden everything gets fixed and everything comes back. And it's brilliant, because Bill and Ted are still there, and they still exist, and Billy and Thea still united the world, and everything else, and it's all lovely, and it's all wonderful, and blah, blah, blah. As you can probably tell from my little enthusiastic retelling of this movie, I love this movie. I freaking love it. because it takes the time travel aspect and the musical aspect and it really gives us something to work with. The actors who play Billy and Thea in this are, like I said, gender swap universe for Bill and Ted, but in the best possible way. I mean, by heavenly Jesus, these two do some of the best accents of Bill and Ted I've ever heard, the best impressions of Bill and Ted I've ever heard, but done for themselves. They elevate it to a different point. It's so good, and it really, really reminds me about how great these two really are as actresses. It really does sort of solidify that for me. And it does make it all so much better. Now, if you didn't see the insanity and the beauty in that retelling, then this isn't the movie for you. It just isn't. Honestly, this movie is everything, is all the insanity of time travel from Avengers Endgame mixed with the original brilliance of Bill and Ted from the 1980s when Excellent Adventure first got released to us. It's perfect. It's complete perfection. It's the best way to close out the trilogy that I can think of. Hell, the credits, they actually asked a bunch of people across the world to film themselves air guitaring, dancing, whatever, and they put it in the credits. And I love that. I love that they made this salute to all the old Bill and Ted fans and the new generation of Bill and Ted fans that grew up knowing about these characters and could finally give their salute and their proud moments to these people. Now, I did send in a clip. It didn't get used. I don't know if maybe I sent it to the wrong email address or maybe it just wasn't picked. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that I didn't care. Because I know that I still love these characters, and also I didn't care that I wasn't in the movie. I didn't care that I wasn't in like 2 seconds of the credits sequence. I love the fact that I got to see Bill and Ted on the screen. I mean, come on! These guys were fantastic! And the lives they've lived over the course of these movies finally all culminated in this one great final act. Now, I don't know if this means that this is the final movie for Bill and Ted. It probably is. What I am hoping is that there will be future movies with Billy and Thea. That could be something. Kind of cool to see. But it's insanity, but it's insanity you can't help but love. That's it, really. So, yeah. But now, anyway, before I sign off, guys, I want to say I'm hopefully I can get you guys back in with this stuff and enjoy me popping back up in the world, which would be great for me to see. Also, I am currently looking to do more reviews of various things, but the thing is that a lot of what I look at, even nowadays, is mostly British-based, is mostly American-based stuff, and I don't look at a lot of British shows as much. So I want you guys to give me some recommendations. Recommend me some shows, recommend me some films, recommend me some stuff British-based that I can look at. Because something I kind of want to pride myself on is I want to be able to do films that come from this country just as much as from America. And do the ones that aren't really reviewed all that much. I've looked around and there's not a lot of Young Dracula reviews online. And I'm surprised. Because that show is amazing and I'd already done my review on it, but, you know, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact that it was one of the fewest that was on there. But anyway, feel free to drop me a comment. Please like, please subscribe. Continue to follow me. All my links will be down either in the description or in my channel header font thingamajig. With all that being said, Randomfish out.